I've got an iPhone, you've got an iPhone, but are we using it right? We know our smartphones are rarely used to make phone calls. And the best feature is the camera. But really, do you know the best angle to capture a lotus flower? Or how to guarantee you get a good shot of a groundhog or a turtle here at Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens before they slip out of your frame? We've got you covered with ArtReach, who will offer tips and tools on how to use your phone to capture that perfect photo, whether in a national park, like in this one, or in your own backyard.
Hi everyone, my name's Jordana and I'm a multidisciplinary artist. So I work with film, I work with photography, ceramics, and glass, you name it, I have probably tried it. But I'm really excited to be sharing some photography practices today because I think photography is such an awesome tool to hold on to memories and places and people that you hope to look back at, and also to explore spaces in a totally new way than you might otherwise do. So today we are in the Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens. So there's some amazing, beautiful scenery. There's all of these just blooming, blossoming flowers, but wherever you are, whether you're in your home, your room, your backyard, walking down the street, this is a workshop for you. You can always find a beautiful and interesting image. So I will be working today on my iPhone, but if you have an Android or another smartphone, totally fine. And in fact, I'm working on a very vintage iPhone, an iPhone 7. So if any of you are worried about not having the appropriate technology, you are totally cool. This is for you. We just work with what we got. Okay, so now we are gonna work on taking our photographs. There are 5 basic steps. Step number 1 is choose what it is that you want to photograph. So if you're outdoors here in the garden or in your own garden, you might be interested in taking photos of trees or people or plants. Maybe you're interested in the soil. Maybe you're interested in a particular color. Just kind of take a look around in your space. What might be something interesting to look at? That's step number 1. Choose what you want to look at. Choose your subject, right? Step 2 is thinking about your background. So if you're taking a photo of a flower, for example, think about what's behind that flower. Is there a street? Are there people? Do you want to have those streets and those people in that photo, or do you want more of a serene look? Do you want it to just be flowers and just be nature? So you might actually, if you can, walk around your object, walk around your flower or your tree, or maybe it's a person, and see what are the different angles, what are the different backgrounds. So step 1, we chose our subject. We found our tree, we found our person. Step 2, we thought about our background. What do we want behind the focus of this image? And step number 3 is our lighting. So many of us may be working outdoors, but you also might be indoors. So some of the lighting is, we gotta get creative. It might not be under our control completely, but you can think about moving around this tree or this flower to find the lighting that you like. Do you want it to be really bright and vibrant? Do you want there to be a shadow? What do you want the mood to be? Maybe darker or lighter, or a color that you want to emphasize, right? So again, take another moment, this time not thinking so much about your background, but thinking about your lighting. If I stand more to the right or to the left, if I look up or down, how does that change my lighting? And if you're inside, you might even be able to shift around a lamp or throw a piece of cloth over your light so it can change your lighting. You can be super playful and fun with this. There's not really a right or wrong answer per se. You're just figuring out what you like. So be playful, be fun, explore a little bit. Once you figured out your lighting and your background, it is time to take your image. And you can take a bunch of different images, you can try different things and see what you like. Maybe if you're inside and you kind of change the lighting of your scene, you could try different types of lighting, you could try different types of backgrounds, because a lot of times we have this whole image of what we're taking. We set up our shot, but it looks different when we actually click. So you can always just try again and set your shot up a little bit differently. So our steps, just to review, are figuring out our subject, choosing our background, figuring out our lighting, then we're setting up our shot if there's anything else we need to move, and then we're taking our image. So our first task today, our first photo exploration or challenge, is to learn about the rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds is kind of like a golden rule of photography. You'll hear it if you start to do any more investigation of different techniques for taking a photo. So in the rule of thirds, we divide up our photo. We divide up an image, and there's 2 horizontal lines and 2 vertical lines. And that creates 9 different quadrants of our photo. And that also creates 4 intersections of those quadrants. So you could imagine looking at an image and there's 4 dots. And people say that these 4 intersections are where the eye naturally goes. So you might even explore as you look at different photos in a magazine or photos that you've taken, where does your eye naturally want to go? And it's one of those 4 points. So this is a really good technique to know about, whether you love it, whether you hate it. It's just good to have this as your foundation. So what we're going to do is try and imagine that our screen was divided up into this rule of thirds. So we have those 2 horizontal lines and 2 vertical lines. And you're going to find your subject that you want to take a photo of, your flower, your person, maybe you're inside and it's a toy or a pen, and try and put that object, that main focus, at one of those 4 intersections. So let's give that a try. It might be confusing and maybe you're like, rule of thirds, what are you talking about? I don't like it. Totally okay. It takes practice. And maybe you just take a bunch of images and then you look at it and say, wait, is that at one of those 4 points? You can always look afterwards, right? It's also good to know if this is a technique you don't like, and that's okay. It's just an important technique that is out there. So let's give it a try. Let's try our rule of thirds, taking a photo with our main focus, our main subject, at one of those 4 intersections. Okay, so I'm interested in this flower because it's sort of partially opened, which is really cool to see that in between stage. And I'm gonna think a little bit about my rule of thirds here and try and get this in sort of the left quadrant. Okay, let's check that image out. I like it, but I also am curious about if I go a little bit closer and almost like have this image feel like it's bursting up into the camera. So I'm looking down to get that feeling of it's bursting open towards me. Well, it's moving a little bit. Come on, buddy, stay still. There we go. Ooh, I like this. It's really close. You almost can't tell it's a flower, which is sort of cool and interesting. I like that one. I'm gonna try underneath. Ooh, I like this. It's a little mysterious. Ooh, I like the light that's happening over here. That's fun. So in this case, the light has really worked for me. I don't really have to adjust anything. It's playing really nicely on these leaves. And so I'm actually gonna get pretty close because I almost wanted to just feel like a texture instead of knowing a lot of background information. See how those turn out. Okay. So we just did rule of thirds. Maybe you loved it, maybe you're curious about it, maybe you do not like it at all. Any of those options is totally cool because now we're gonna throw it away. Forget the rule of thirds. We don't care about quadrants, we don't care about intersections, doesn't even matter. Let that go for this prompt. Now we're gonna take a look around our spaces, our gardens, our beautiful Kenilworth lotus flowers, or maybe something in your own room, out the window, and just experiment with angles. It should be like get low, looking up at maybe a leaf or something on your ceiling. Look down at your image, look from the side, and don't worry at all about if it's at one of those intersection points. Even think about getting really close. For example, if you get really close to like a leaf so you can see all of those lines. So much so that the picture you're taking might not even look like your original object. So if you get really close to a leaf, maybe it doesn't even look like a leaf anymore. Maybe it looks like a map. Maybe it looks like a drawing, right? So totally explore on this challenge or exploration all the different ways that you can use this framing that you have, this little camera, whatever shape or size you have. Maybe you have my vintage iPhone 7, or maybe you have something newer. But how can this frame that we have, this space, change up objects that we know? How can we make a leaf look different, a tree look different, a pencil, our own window, our clothing, by getting closer or farther away, or looking at unexpected angles? I like these leaves over here. So let's see. This is kind of nice how they have these shadows on them. I'm gonna try from below. Okay. There we go, I like this. I like this display over here where this leaf is almost holding these flowers. It's kind of cool. I'm gonna explore this a little. We have some nice lighting. And so I'm tapping this part of my image here on my phone so that this part can really come into focus and not all of this background. Though I like that background, but I want this to be the center. Now I want to try maybe more of a portrait style, almost like I'm taking a graduation photo of one of these flowers. A flower graduation ceremony. Okay, let's try this one over here. Okay, let's see how that looks. All right, so now we've practiced a couple of different techniques. We've worked with rule of thirds, a little bit more of a formal structure, something that's good to know about because photographers use this all of the time, and you're probably using it without realizing it, because that's the whole idea of rule of thirds. It's where do we naturally look? Where do we naturally want things to be? And then we had our second challenge or exploration of what are all the totally different and crazy and maybe odd and experimental ways we can use this little frame that we have to hold the world. Looking up, looking down, looking strange angles, maybe shifting up our light. We played. Rule of thirds, playing around. Now, I have a sort of different kind of prompt for you all. This is about thinking about relationships first. So not necessarily a photographic technique in terms of the angle, but about what is the message that you would like to send. So for this prompt, I'm asking you to create an image that shows the relationship between you or maybe another person in your space and nature or the room you're in. So if you're outside in nature, it could be your relationship with nature. If you're doing this activity with a family member, maybe you end up taking a photo of a family member or friend's relationship with nature. And you can use these techniques. You can think about rule of thirds. You can think about different angles. In your image, just some ideas. You could go with a portrait view like this. This is our vertical look. It's kind of like what you often see maybe a graduation photo in, is this portrait view. You could also look landscape like this. To the side, traditionally, this is a little bit more for nature scenes, or if you have a big group of people, or if the background is something that you really want to showcase. So you could choose either of those, or maybe even choose different angles of your camera, somewhere in between, because we're just experimenting. So as you think about this prompt, what is my relationship with my space, my garden, my room, whatever it is? Or what is the relationship of someone else who I'm with and the space that we are in? You could take an image that has their face in the space, but you could also do something that's maybe a little bit more subtle, maybe not as obvious of a message. Maybe it's your hand reaching for a leaf or a chair. Maybe it's a footprint in the dirt. Maybe it's someone reading a book. Maybe you change the lighting and create a specific mood that shows, how do I feel in this space? Or how does this other person feel in this space? And you can really play around and be creative and think about, what do I want to share about this room that I'm in, this garden that I'm in? What do I want other people to know, or what do I want to remember? So this is a little bit more of a personal, creative exercise, and don't be afraid to try different things. You can shift your lights, you can shift your angle. Maybe you start with a particular subject in mind. You're like, I know what I want to do. I want to take a picture of my friend nearby these flowers because my friend loves these flowers and I really want them to remember. But maybe it's not working out or you're not feeling inspired. Totally cool. You can always pick a new subject. Maybe you're more interested in a tree. Maybe you're more interested in your own relationship with this space. So give it a try. I know this is like a big and open-ended prompt, but just find some rooting in the tools that we've learned. If you're feeling lost, we have rule of thirds. Take anything and put it at one of those intersections. We also have our different exploration of angles. Looking from above, looking from below. And what does that exploration do? When we look up at an object, it gives it power, it elevates it, it makes it seem really big. When we look down at an object, it makes it seem a little smaller, maybe powerless. It's up to you, right? It's up to the image that you want to create. So play around. This one's more for fun and exploration. Watch me fall in like this one. I like this one because this is maybe less of a technique and more a relationship between objects thing in the photo. Is these two kind of look like they're friends, how they're crossing. So I'm trying to find a pretty close-up way of doing this. So you can kind of see that this leaf and this flower have a little friendship going on. I like how their stems are intertwined. Okay, so if you took this workshop and you're feeling hungry for more, you want to learn a little bit more, but you want to stay with your iPhone or Android or other smartphone, whatever you have, there are actually a bunch of ways that you can kind of take your images to a new or more interesting level with some apps that you can download. And the apps I'll mention are all free and they can work on Android and iPhone. So there is Adobe Photoshop Lightroom, which is really great. There's also Google Snapseed. And the third one I'll talk about is Instagram, which has a lot of great filters in addition to being a cool way to share what you're working on and what you're thinking about. So all three of these, Adobe Photoshop Lightroom, Google Snapseed, and also Instagram, offer a bunch of different ways to add filters on your image. So maybe the lighting wasn't what you'd hoped, right? Maybe it's a little less focused than you wanted it to be, or you want it to look a little sketchy or a different mood. You can find all of those filters in these three apps and kind of play around with which one you like best. So now that we've gone through these different prompts, learned about a couple of additional apps that you can download on your phone if you're interested in exploring more kinds of editing techniques, I really hope you all enjoyed this workshop, and not only that you learned something, but that you feel free to really play around and explore, right? Because this is what it is. It's an exploration of how our backgrounds, how our angles, how our focus impact what an image looks like and what it feels like. So just a couple quick reminders before you go on and explore your own photography practice is when you go out to take an image, to hold on to a memory or explore a space, think about your background. Is it cluttered? Do you want it to be cluttered or do you want it to be crisp and clean? Think about your focus. What do you want the sharpest details of your image to be? Do you want your flower maybe that's in the forefront, the front of your image to be sharp and focused? Or do you want what's behind the flower to be sharp and focused? And on your phone, fortunately, you can adjust that pretty easily by just tapping where you want that sharp, crisp detail to be. Think about your lighting. Do you need to add or change your lighting? Think about your angles. How does looking up, down, to the side change this space that you're working with? And play. Go out and play. So once again, my name is Jordana, and if you have any questions or are interested in booking additional workshops with me or even looking at some of my own work, you can check me out at my website, which is jordanamedia.com. So that's Jordana media, media.com. Thank you so much for tuning in and doing this workshop with me, and I hope you have a beautiful time at Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens or in your own homes exploring photography.